Good afternoon and welcome everyone. We will begin our live webinar series, Organizing Your B.A.I.L, here momentarily. We will let everyone get into the virtual room and we will begin shortly and promptly on time. Thank you for joining us and good afternoon. We will begin shortly our live webinar series, Organizing Your B.A.I.L today. We will give it a few moments and let everyone get into our virtual room. We will get started here momentarily with our live webinar series, Organizing Your B.A.I.L. Thank you all for joining us and being here. I see a lot of people coming into the virtual room, so thank you for being here. We will get started here shortly. So good afternoon and welcome everyone to week 4 of the Capital Readiness Program's Organizing Your B.A.I.L webinar series. My name is Sonya Bigelow-Smith, and I'm the director of our Capital Readiness Program, a 4-year initiative to empower small business growth and improve the capital readiness of small businesses across the region. On behalf of our President and CEO, Sharon Pender, we extend a special greeting for your attendance today. You all may not know that CRMSDC provides a host of resources. We provide National Minority Business Certification for private sector contracting, matchmaking opportunities with many of our corporate members, and government contracting business development coaching by the way of our business center located in Fairfax, Virginia. To learn more, visit our website at www.crmsdc.org. So once again, I hope you all have your brown bag, your lunch, a beverage, or a snack with you as we get ready for an engaging conversation. Organizing Your B.A.I.L has been designed very intentionally to expose and reinforce the importance of having these professionals on your team: a banker, an accountant, an insurance agent, investors for funding options, and a lawyer. Investors, in fact, access to capital is one of the biggest challenges small businesses face. And our guest speaker today will certainly share alternative funding options as you seek to grow and scale. Before we kick it off, let me start with a few housekeeping items. This session is being recorded and will be available to you within 24 to 48 hours. My teammate, Amanda Beal, our program coordinator, is standing by, monitoring the chat. And today we'll monitor the Q&A box, chat box at the bottom of your screens. So say hello to Amanda in the chat and tell us all where you're dialing in from today. So let's get started and let me introduce you to our moderator today, Ms. Maria Randall. Maria is the president and CEO of LLADNAR Services, a consulting firm partnering with the Capital Readiness Program this year, specializing in assisting small businesses shore up their financials as they prepare to seek capital. And with her years of experience as a banker, I am sure you all know that she has seen dozens of financial projections and loan packets, and is the very best person we could have to help today moderate this series. Welcome, Maria. How are you today?
Hi, good morning. I'm fine, thanks. And how are you?
Doing good, doing good. And thank you for being here again another week with us as we continue on with our series. Maria,
Yes.
I'm about to turn the virtual room over to you, as I always do. But
Okay.
please share a little bit about yourself and what inspired your journey.
Yes, absolutely. And I'm so excited to be here for today. I'm really looking forward to learning a lot from this discussion today. So I founded LLADNAR Services, which is a small business loan advisory and consulting firm, after about 25 years as a small business lender. My area of specialty was SBA loans. So I'm really fortunate to say over those decades, I've been able to help a lot of small businesses around the country access capital using the SBA's programs, but also using conventional loan programs. And I decided to form the company to help small businesses prepare for the loan process, to understand it, to get capital ready and get loan ready, and to be able to share inside information, things that they may not know that a lender is interested in and looking for to help them have a better chance of getting to a loan approval. So I'm so appreciative of the opportunity to partner with the Capital Readiness Program and to do this series and to share some great information. And as you said, Sonia, the B.A.I.L team is so essential to businesses having, all of those components is to help you to grow because they can really help folks and sort of navigate the intricacies of running a small business. So I'm so glad that we're doing this.
Great. Well, thank you for being here, Maria, and moderating this series this week. I'm going to again turn the virtual room over to you, and I'll be back shortly after our presentation. I'm so looking forward to hearing from Mr. Nixon this afternoon. Thank you.
Absolutely. Yes. And so it's my pleasure to be able to introduce Randall Nixon. I'll let him tell you all a little bit more about himself. But Randall Nixon is the CEO and General Counsel of Ampley Heartstone, which is a non-bank lending firm in Bethesda, Maryland. He also serves as an adjunct professor of law at the University of Baltimore Law School. Randall has served in cabinet level positions in the administrations of two governors, and he holds degrees from Cornell University, Johns Hopkins University, Indiana University Law School, and Harvard Business School. So please, everyone, welcome Randall Nixon, who's joining us to share some great nuggets that I'm sure you all will take away quite a lot. So Randall, welcome. And I gave the folks a little bit about your biography, but please tell
Mhm.
us about your journey.
Well, thank you, Maria. I appreciate it. It has been a journey. It sounds when you read someone's resume, it sounds very linear that they went from one success to another. But I want to tell all of the entrepreneurs on the Zoom that that there have been many stumbles and many failures, and it's a matter of picking yourself up and keep going. Winston Churchill once said, if you're in hell, keep going, don't stop. And so, I'm here to tell the journey about all perspectives, not just the perspectives, not just the highlights, because everyone struggles, everyone goes through challenges, particularly entrepreneurs, and sometimes you feel very alone.
Very true.
So one of the things that I'm focused on, I'm passionate about of CRMSDC. I'm passionate about helping folks in the small and medium-sized business space. So I'm looking forward to this.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, we're looking forward to hearing everything you have to share today. I know everyone's going to take away some good nuggets. So the floor is yours, sir.
Well, thank you. I want to welcome everybody to the call. I'm both an academic and an attorney and a loan broker and an investor. So I do several things. As an academic, I never use one word when 10 will do. So I'll try not to be too prolix, but I do want to get through this because I want to give everyone a holistic view of what non-bank capital projects and programs are available to people. So that's my information. You can see where we can go from there. So Amanda, next slide. Yeah. So here's what we're going to go over. And I wanted to do this slide just to make sure that you understood the scope of what we were trying to do and what we can't do in the little bit of time that we have. So one of the things that I want to talk about is securing funding outside normal banking channels. We want to talk about investment criteria, what investors look for in a package. Community development funds, which are critical, particularly to minority businesses and what they do and what they can't do. I want to talk about how to manage your banking relationships and what you can expect from bankers and the things that they can't do. We're going to talk about raising money through crowdfunding and credit sourcing. And these are collateral based programs. We want to talk about accounts receivables financing, mobilization financing, what we also call contract financing. We want to talk about how to raise capital, either through equity or through debt. And then we want to talk about topics for another time, because I want you to actually know that those topics are things that are not in the scope of this presentation, but that you need to know about. And then finally, there's a small glossary at the end, so that if I use any terms that you may not be familiar with, that you at least have reference to those, and you can deal with them in one fell swoop. And then we'll summarize. So let's talk about non-bank investments. And this is one of the great untold secrets of the world of capital. There is right now over $1 trillion worth of non-bank capital sitting in the wings, waiting for people to ask and to present for that capital. And this is something you probably have not heard of. There are lots and lots of resources for capital. The beauty of what we do as brokers and investors is your file is presented not just to one investor, they're presented to several investors. So you have a smorgasbord of potential investors available to you. And these investors are specifically dealing with small and medium-sized businesses, and many of them deal with startups. These investors take on more risk typically than banks, although some are very conservative, and they enable you to secure financing. We talk about how important it is to maintain an existing relationship with a bank. Simply because you're getting financing from other sources doesn't mean that you can jettison those relationships. You need to have them. Non-bank investors are fast, and we move very quickly, and those deals are funded quickly so that you get access to the capital that you need. Non-bank investors are private investors, and we'll go over that in some detail. They're not depository institutions, and these investments can take the form of debt, equity, or both. We can create a stack or a mix of financing. Next, Amanda. These are just a sampling of the kinds of investment products that are available. And you need to think about what your business is doing, what it needs now, and what it might need in the future. And those obviously term loans, lines of credit, startup financing, cannabis financing, commercial real estate, those that we know most about, accounts receivable and factoring and contract financing, which we touched on, SBA loans, capital raises, and we'll talk about that in some detail, peer-to-peer financing, and then finally equipment financing. Amanda? These are key factors to think about when you're packaging your business for financing. And this was covered in the banking B.A.I.L series, but it bears going over again, because bankers and investors have similar profiles in what they're looking for, but they're also looking for several things that are different. Obviously, you need a clear business model. You need something that is scalable, something that goes beyond you, if not now, at some point in the future. Um, they're looking at market opportunities. How can you build this business? How can you grow it? And what the market opportunities are? Have you identified them properly? Your management team, it's not enough for you to have expertise. If you're going to grow and scale your business, you need to have other people on your team, either as employees or as strategic partners. Um, your financial health, either you have strong revenue, profitability, and cash flow, or you're working toward that. So, so that is something that you need to show. It's not enough for the investor to look at it and have a hope. And finally, you need to have a growth potential and an exit strategy. So these things are clear paths for investors so that they know how they're going to get their money back, when they're going to get their money back, and the level of certitude that they're going to be able to have when they're comfortable investing in your business. And these are things, again, that bankers have that in their requests, but investors have them too, and to some extent to a higher degree. Financial statements, income statements, balance sheets, cash flow statements, cap tables, something I didn't put in here. Market analysis, understanding your market, understanding who you're trying to go after, and then no investor wants to walk into a lawsuit. So it is critical that you understand the regulatory landscape that your business is in and you can respond to that. It's not enough to simply have your lawyer talk about this. You need to be able to talk about this in the same way you talk about your numbers, and the same way that you have a relationship with your accountant. You need to have that same kind of conversation with your attorney. And finally, collateral. One of the things I say is right now I'm focusing on unsecured financing, but if you have collateral, obviously real estate, but more liquid forms of collateral, CDs, readily convertible notes, intellectual property. If that intellectual property, if you have patents, for example, if you have intellectual property that you can leverage, that is also very useful. Amanda? There is a whole universe of potential funding out there for you. And these are usually categorized as NBFCs, non-bank financial institutions. And they provide certain bank-like services, certain bank-like functions, but they don't hold a banking license. They are not subject to banking regulations. They are not depository institutions. They don't have a whole lot of bells and whistles associated with those depository institutions. They don't offer checking accounts. They don't offer money management accounts. They don't do non-commercial loans. They're strictly commercial lenders, and they include investment banks, money market funds, insurance companies, hedge funds, family offices, something that a lot of folks who look like me aren't necessarily conversant with. And these are all examples of NBFCs. If you all might recall the Dodd-Frank legislation that came out after the Great Recession of 2007 and 2008, the after Dodd-Frank, there was a proliferation of NBFCs because the market opportunities became so much greater. So these are just some examples. Amanda? The advantages of NBFCs. They are alternative sources of funding and credit. One of the myths about the banking industry is that they're the only games in town. Well, they're not. And that's something that you need to be aware of. They invest in high-risk categories, categories that bankers simply will not touch. They do, I mentioned cannabis as an example, but there are others. They provide liquidity for the financial system, which helps all of us. The loans and the investments are available. And in many cases, when you go to a bank, the bank simply won't be able to provide you with a loan. So the capital is available. They are fast. They work quickly. Bankers talk a lot about relationships. Well, this is something that is not required for a non-bank investor. You do not have to require depository. There's no depository requirement. However, there are fees associated with non-bank investors. Some of them are quite reasonable, but you'll have to put up some upfront money in order to be able to access the capital. And again, these can be used either for debt or for equity or some combination of both of those. Amanda? CDFIs, and again, this is why you need an ongoing banking relationship. CDFIs work very closely with local banks. And we are blessed in the DMV with several excellent CDFIs. Community development financial institutions are mission-driven institutions. They provide services to historically underserved communities. And they include community development banks, credit unions, and loan funds. They offer flexible terms, lower rates, frequently technical assistance to get you up and going. And they occasionally will do equity investments in businesses. And the great benefit to that is that for startup businesses that can't qualify any other way, they can provide capital. They also, you can also see the impact of these CDFIs in your local community. You can see the actual benefits. They are limited in the capital that they can provide. They don't provide, typically not over $1 million. They do have income restrictions, so not everyone can qualify. They're typically looking for people who have not made a lot of money historically. There are geographic restrictions, obviously, and then there are certain industries that they simply can't fund. And again, this is why you need a banking relationship, because non-bank lenders won't do certain things. Banks, and we work very closely with banks. A lot of our referrals for Ampley Heartstone come from banks, because there are banks who simply can't. They want to keep you as a depository customer, but they can't lend to you. So banks offer a whole range of services. Only about 25% of banks' revenues are generated through loans. So they're able to provide you with checking, demand deposits, cash management, investment tools. They have integrated accounting software that works seamlessly with your business. And due to community reinvestment requirements, they continue to invest in our communities. And banks are a great source of networking. So you need to have a solid relationship with a bank, even if you're not borrowing from a bank. Next, please. Now let's talk a little bit about crowdfunding. And this is something that you can generate a lot of your startup money with, or a lot of your, what you might call Series A money with. And there are different types of crowdfunders. Crowdfunders you can either offer a reward in exchange for getting funding from a crowdfunder. You can actually solicit investors to invest in your company, or you can simply do debt, and you can pay interest on that debt. And there are certain platforms that you can use that I've listed here: Kickstarter, Indiegogo, Seed Invest, Crowdcube, and Lending Club, and Funding Circle. These are different sorts of crowdfunders, and some people have been very, very successful in raising their initial rounds of capital. And there's some benefits to it. You reach a large number of people across a whole swath of demographics. You can test your markets to see if their product or your service is good enough for the market. and where you need to place your marketing, and you can increase potential exposure to your business. There are very strict regulatory requirements that you need to think about in that regard. And it's the disadvantage that I've seen in crowdfunding, it is very, very time intensive. So it may be something that you have to outsource, and that also requires some funding. So, Amanda, let's talk about credit scoring. We at Ampley Heartstone have had a lot of success in helping people, particularly startups, get the kind of funding that they need in order to start their businesses or get their businesses rolling up to the next level simply by credit scoring. And the beauty of credit scoring is that these are uncollateralized loans. You don't have to put up your house. You don't have to put up your firstborn male child. They are they tend to have higher interest, although not necessarily. It depends on the lender or the investor. They can provide funding very quickly. And I can give you lots of anecdotes about businesses that, for one reason or another, need quick capital. You have a customer who hasn't paid you, and they're having their own crisis, and you need payroll. So you need payroll by the end of the week. How do you get funding in 72 hours or 1 week's time? So there's that. There's quick access. Loans are unrestricted. You can use these loans for any purpose, unlike a lot of banks that require specific issues. Accounts receivable financing, factoring, and mobilization. All of these have different requirements, but accounts receivables financing are a good way to increase your cash flow, and it improves and helps your business relationships, because you can get the kind of cash that you need without selling the receivable. Factoring is where you actually sell the receivable to a third party, and that your business no longer owns the receivable. You don't have to worry about collections. You get the cash up front, and you're able to operate your business. There's both recourse financing and non-recourse financing. The non-recourse financing tends to be more expensive, but it's available. Mobilization funding. This is something a lot of small businesses aren't aware of. Mobilization funding enables businesses to start projects without a lot of upfront capital. And we have several lenders in our portfolio who can provide you with mobilization funding. And I can give you several examples of that. The beauty of both factoring and mobilization funding is that the funding is not based on your credit. It's based on the contract or the purchase order. So that's very advantageous to a business that's either doing startups or is just beginning the process of building their customer base. Amanda? Capital raises. Now, this is something that we spend a lot of time with at Ampley Heartstone. A capital raise is the process of using external sources to finance business operations, and they tend to be long-term. You can either raise capital through an equity process, you can raise capital through debt, or you can do both. And companies frequently do both. They will do a process called stacking, where they're able to raise equity funding through the distribution of stock, and they'll also take on debt, because there's certain investors that will prefer equity. Certain investors will prefer debt. You can do both. And these, as I said, tend to be for longer term projects. And we have investment bankers and fintech companies that specialize in this. And I can give you several examples, and we'll probably, when we get to the Q&A, I can give you lots of examples of all of these that will give you a whole universe of opportunities to get funding. Amanda? So it's probably a little bit quicker than I anticipated, but I wanted to leave lots of time for questions because I know there will be. So the focus of this was in raising capital without using real estate. This is non-collateralized funding. What we did not cover was traditional real estate leveraging, mergers and acquisitions as growth tools. I wanted to mention mergers and acquisitions because a lot of people don't, they think that, you know, when they hear M&As, they think that M&As are for big companies. Well, no, not necessarily. You can actually um, uh, grow your business through a merger or an acquisition. And I wanted to make sure that you understood that. We didn't talk about grants. The grants can come from both state, federal, or local jurisdictions. They can come from nonprofits. There are a whole universe of grant funding opportunities that are available. And that's particularly critical for small businesses, medium-sized businesses, minority businesses. Banks, as I said, are just the starting point. Banks are the entry point for learning a lot of this information. Some banks will share this information with you. A lot of banks will not. And one of the things that I wanted to emphasize is that it's critical that you interview your banker. You need to know whether or not your banker is someone who understands where this process is going. And the banker has an interest in generating a relationship so that you can become a good depository customer. But that means that you need to be critical about how you talk about issues with your banker. Again, about $1 trillion in capital markets is available from alternative sources. And this is a heartfelt plea to everyone who's on the call. Don't get discouraged if your banker says that you are unbankable. I hate that phrase. No one is unbankable. Everyone has value. So don't think that you should walk away from this. You need this information in order to be able to say to your banker, well, here's an alternative. Here's another way I can do this. And you can build that community around you, the B.A.I.L community and the larger entrepreneurial community that can help you. And finally, before we start on questions, I'm going to talk to everyone here. If you're not a member of CRMSDC, you're freeloading and you need to join. You need to be part of the community. You can't grow your business. You can't grow your community unless you are a part of the community. And this is our community. We need each other in this entire process. So thank you. Appreciate it. Oh, and here's my glossary in case. So you'll get the slide. I probably went through a lot of stuff very quickly because I wanted to make sure we had time for questions. But there are some terms that you might not be familiar with because I spoke interchangeably about debt and equity. So that's something you'll have in the slide projection when Sonya and Amanda send that out.
Wow.
Thank you, Amanda. Appreciate it.
Oh, thank you so much. My goodness, that was awesome. And I know that Amanda is going to get to the Q&A box and start sharing what the attendees have put in. But you hit on so
Mhm.
much. I knew you would. You hit on so much good information. I don't know if you could see the reactions that folks
Mhm.
were posting as we went along. But you talked about things that, as you said at the beginning, are not everyday topics of conversation in our community. And they need to be. We need
Mhm.
to have this information. You're talking about capital raises and crowdfunding. I loved when you talked about M&As and the fact that
Mhm.
yeah, we think, large, Fortune 500 companies are the ones who do that. But in fact, it's true. Small businesses can grow by acquiring another small business. I work with folks all the time
Mhm.
to help them prepare to navigate that particular process. So I just love that you shared all that. I wonder if I could throw in a question or
Mhm.
two as
Mhm.
to get us started on that segment. And one of the questions was, I know you talked about, for example, CDFIs, it's mission-based lenders. There are certain limitations as to how large a loan they can provide. But for some of these options, what is the
Mhm.
range? What's the smallest loan someone can get if they're looking for, or smallest amount of capital, even if it's not in the form of a loan, that they can typically get with
Mhm.
some of these avenues?
Yeah, each one is slightly different. I can tell you that with just to give you one example of the kind of credit scoring funding that we do, we were able to secure $500,000 for a distillery in Upper Marlboro, and the gentleman who started the process didn't have a credit, very good credit, because he just started the business. It was only 6 months old. And so he solicited his wife and two of her friends, and she was able to, they were able, between the three of them, were able to get actually $800,000 in financing. They took half the money, they took $465,000, all on credit scores, strictly on credit scores. And the beauty of that was that not all of them had to be members of the officers of the corporation. They were simply friends. And this is something traditionally that folks who look like us typically do, because we don't have access to bank financing. So, but it can be as small as $50,000. And again, Maria, to your point, these can be stacked. You can get a very small amount of funding. You can use that to leverage a larger amount of funding. You can get 25 or $30,000 from a high interest lender. You can then go, and in a month's time or 2 months' time or 3 months' time, go pay that off and
Right.
then get some longer term funding. So the range is tremendous. It goes anywhere from 25 or $30,000 up to millions of dollars.
Wonderful. Wonderful. No, that is great. Well, Amanda, I don't know if you've got some questions ready for us. I know we actually are a little bit ahead of schedule, which is great. So how about I throw in this one other one, because
Please.
the cannabis industry, right, is growing, is booming. We're hearing a lot more about folks wanting to get into that business. I noticed on one of the slides when you were talking about the advantage of working with NBFCs, you mentioned that cannabis as a high risk industry. And I wonder if you can share with everyone, why is it considered a high risk
Yeah,
industry? Just because it's fairly new?
it's because it's number one, it's new. And number two, I think it's because historically there's a stigma attached to it. It's newly legalized. So we don't necessarily associate it with a traditional industry niche. And the third reason is that historically banks don't fund that. They don't want to be near that. That's not something that they like. And because of that, the statistical information simply isn't available. There's not enough of it going on. And so, and for very clear reasons, we have been denied that. We've been denied the opportunity to participate in that industry. I just by way of anecdote, my son tried to get a license. This is during the first round of license distribution in the state of Maryland. He and two other brilliant friends of his got together. They went to the best schools I know because I paid for them, and no, they have business degrees and they're very, very bright, and they were excluded. And I and the Maryland legislature changed that and made sure that people who look like us had access to those. So I think that's one of the that's several of the reasons that banks are not going to go in places that they don't feel comfortable.
You're exactly right. You're exactly right. Thanks for expounding on that. Well, Amanda, why don't we turn it over to you? I know you've been monitoring the Q&A box diligently and see what questions have been posed for Randall.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So the first question actually comes from Jaquette. She wanted to know, does it matter if you are an LLC, C Corp, or an S Corp to get some of the funding that Randall is talking about today?
The short answer is no. It doesn't really matter what your corporate structure is. That is a matter. I mean, obviously, as long as you are either incorporated or you have a partnership, as long as you have the legal structure that enables you to do it, you can go ahead and do that. Obviously, you need an EIN number. I would highly recommend a Dun & Bradstreet number. The lenders that we are associated with, the investors that we're associated with, are going to require that that you have the structure in place. They're not going to lend to an individual, even though individuals have to guarantee these loans in 9 cases out of 10.
Awesome. We have another question from Constance. Can you talk a little bit more about assignment of accounts receivable or accounts factoring? It's a great opportunity, but there's a cost that businesses don't always understand.
Yes. Yes. I mean, there's several levels. One is simply accounts receivable. Taking your accounts receivable and getting a lender to loan off of those receivables. And at that level, you're still holding on to that receivable. You still own it. So that lender is going to discount that receivable. I mean, everyone will. Whether it's that or factoring or mobilization funding. So typically they'll discount the receivable of anywhere between 80 and 90%. So they can give you 80% of that receivable, and they'll hold back something as a discounted rate. Now, with factoring, you actually sell the receivable. You sell it. So a third party takes that receivable and actually go through the process of collecting on that receivable. The beauty of that, and that tends to be more expensive than accounts receivable financing, where you still hold on to that receivable. The beauty of factoring is that you're no longer responsible for collecting on that invoice or that project. The factoring company will do that, and then you get up to 90% of your money right away. You don't have to wait for that. Obviously that's going to help your cash flow. The disadvantages, it tends to be more expensive than accounts receivable financing, but you get your money right away. You can turn it over more quickly. Now, and there's both recourse and non-recourse financing. Recourse financing means that you're still on the hook for that. They're still gonna, if they can't collect from your customer, then they're gonna come to you for that. Now, there's also non-recourse financing where you're done with it. You don't have to worry about that. That tends to be more expensive because it's more risk to the lender or the investor. in order to factor that receivable. And finally, mobilization funding. Mobilization funding takes place when, and I'll give you an example. I had a client who has come to us who got a $9 million contract with the United States Navy. And she needed to buy equipment, she needed to staff up, she needed to create the infrastructure necessary in order to service that $9 million contract. Well, that really can't be done if she's simply waiting for an invoice for 60 days or 90 days, or in the case of the United States Navy, 120 days. And mobilization financing gives you a portion of your profit up front so that you can actually go and do the things that you need to do in order to service that contract. The beauty of mobilization funding is that the profile that the mobilization funder is lending on is not you. They're not worried about your credit. They don't care about your credit. They care about the credit of the United States Navy. They care about the credit of the person generating that purchase order or generating that contract. And so what that means is you as a small company can leverage the mobilization funding to bid on larger contracts. And you can get bigger contracts and you can service those contracts. One of the things that I have seen, particularly with minority businesses, is they can get the contracts, but they can't hold on to the contract. They can't stay the incumbent on a contract because they weren't able to service the last contract. Mobilization funding eliminates that problem.
Thank you so much for that, Randall. Next question is from Mercedita. What are some of the requirements that you need to have prepared before you approach a financial resource?
Well, that I guess that's the third or fourth slide that I mentioned. I mean, it's great to have a full-blown business plan. You need to, you need to have the basics. You need to have income statements. You need to have tax returns. You need to have a balance sheet. You need to have, if you already have debt or obligations, you need to have a debt schedule. You need to have an asset schedule. All of those things are basic. You need to have bank statements. All of those things are basic. Everybody's going to ask for those, so don't bother to sort of throw your hands up, right? If you're a startup or if you don't have that history, then you're restricted in the kind of funding that you get. You have to stay with startup financing. If you're looking for equity or if you're looking for a capital raise, then we have fintechs and investment bankers in our portfolio that will help you do that. They will work with you and your accountant to help you do that. So, and there's a cost, but the cost is not exorbitant. It's not a crazy cost. I mean, typically the range is anywhere from $5,000 to $10,000. So if you can raise small money through a whole range of private sources, then you can go get the big money. I'll give you an example. I'm helping to finance a resort in the Caribbean, and the gentleman really doesn't have any capital to speak of. But what we're doing is we're going to a fintech company which has an investment banking function. And that investment banking function will provide the full-blown business plan that will then enable him to go out and get the funding that he needs. And he's paying very little for that service.
Thank you, Randall. Let's see. What is your take on using credit cards as a way to fund a small startup?
We offer that. One of in the startup, we actually have actually several lenders who will do startups, and they start with credit cards. And obviously you'll still have to have an EIN. You still have to have you'll have to be incorporated by the state that you're in, that you're in. You still have to have those, but credit cards are a very, very good way, and these particular cards are anywhere from they're 0% interest anywhere from 6 months to 18 months. So you have a long runway to be able to go out and replace those cards once you run out of that zero interest time to actually go get some larger funding. I would not recommend credit card financing for unless you have that structure in place for any length of time. Unless you have 0% interest for 6 to 18 months, I would not recommend it because you don't know if you can go out and get the bigger financing.
Understood. Thank you. And one last question. It seems that the process is not favorable towards businesses in the food and beverage industry any longer. Do you have any tips to overcome?
Yeah, I would agree with that. And that's because the margins of historically very small in F&B. And banks have been burned. They were really burned during COVID. And I've noticed a real pullback in financing food and beverage businesses. So, by all means, go talk to your banker, by all means, and see what you can do for them. But I mean, what they can do for you. But we work with several F&B finance companies who understand the volatility of that industry and the margins associated with it.
Randall, thank you so much again. I mean, such great information that you shared with everyone today. My goodness, and great questions from the attendees. This was all, as I said, information that we needed to hear that isn't talked about a lot in our community. So it's great having you to be able to share this. We could tell you're quite passionate about it. That came through quite well. So really greatly appreciated. And everyone, thank you all for joining us. I'll just preview before turning the video room back over to Sonya. Please do come back next week to join us. We're going to be hitting the L in our B.A.I.L series and having a dynamic lawyer, Beverly Winstead, join us next week at 12. So we'll be continuing the conversation then. So Sonya, I'll turn it back over to you, and Randall, thank you again.
Thank you, Maria. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Maria. And thank you, Randall, so much. We knew that this was going to be a rich conversation, and you hit on so many key points. I was furiously taking notes as we're assisting our business owners through our capital readiness program. But thank you so much, Randall, and have a very, very good afternoon. Maria, thank you again for moderating the session this afternoon. And we'll see you next week as we introduce Ms. Beverly Winstead and have a conversation with her. So thank you everyone for joining us today. As a reminder, the presentation and the recording will be sent to everyone who registered within 24 to 48 hours. We hope that you enjoyed the content provided to you today by Mr. Randall Nixon, CEO and General Counsel of Ampley Heartstone. If we didn't get to all of your questions, Amanda did place his contact information in the chat and will also be provided for you in the presentation deck that we'll send out. Next week, grab a beverage, your lunch, and a snack again, and join us for our last session with Ms. Beverly Winstead, who's the principal of the Law Office of Beverly Winstead. Until next week, remember that the best time to shore up your business foundation and to seek capital is when you don't need to. Preparation will always be key. Onward and upward, thank you, and have a good afternoon.